Welcome on into Sports Memo Today, a Thursday edition of Football Thursday with my usual crew. Excited to be welcoming back Matt Josephs and Eric Pauly on the show here today. You see in the side scroll, we got another great deal for you here on Sports Memo Today. SMT3 gets a 3-day all access for the price of one. You get to pick the day that your all access starts, and it's only good for any of the guests that have been on Sports Memo Today this week. So it's a busy show here today. We're going to get the guys in, get them out, because Eric Pauly has full count coming up. Matt Josephs has about 1,000 different radio hits to do. So we're going to get them in, get you that actionable info you know and love, and then get you the hell out of here and get you ready for this Bengals and Dolphins game. I'm still trying to find the people who are on the Dolphins because it just sounds like Bengals, the play of the public and the sharps. So maybe we'll find that Dolphins money on this show. You'll have to stay tuned to find out. Let's welcome in our first guest. Eric Pauly is joining us. And EP, how's football season been treating you, brother?
Yeah, football's been a wild ride. It was a very hot start to the season, followed up with 2 mediocre weeks, but we are still plus a little under a unit for the season. So we're talking week 4. I'm not concerned. Process is there. Results will follow.
That's what you got to do. Trust the process. Unless you're a Sixers fan, that hasn't really worked out for you too great. But Pauly, let's get into it, man, because I know you're pumped up. Full count right around the way. Baseball's still been good to you, even though football's been chugging right along. But let's start with there's very few teams that have looked worse than the Washington Commanders, specifically last week when my Birds took it to Carson Wentz, 9 different sacks in the game. And now this Commanders team is going to be facing off against a pretty stout front for the Dallas Cowboys. But I don't know. This is about as low of a buy low spot as you can find in this Commanders and Cowboys game. How are you betting?
Yeah, so Dan, I was actually at FedEx Field this past Sunday.
Nice.
And I kid you not, it was 65% Eagles fans taking over in Landover, Maryland. And I was sitting behind the Washington sideline in the 200 section, fantastic seats, and across to the Philly side, it was a sea of absolute green. I've never seen FedEx Field be even close to at capacity, and believe it or not, we were on Sunday, and it was solely because of people driving down on 95 and headed to see the Eagles play, certainly not the Commanders play. And like you mentioned, and I got to see up close and personal, I was actually riding a prop of the Eagles over 2 sacks. They had 3 in the first series. So that was an easy fun cash, but it was actually hilarious to see the stadium. But like you mentioned, Dan, this is, and not necessarily even just buy low, but where I'm really looking to find value here is, yes, it is week 4. Yes, we have a lot of football to be played, but this is a must-win game for the Washington Commanders, and there's really no other way to go about it. And I'm not saying in any sport, if you did this in baseball last week, you have to bet the team that has to win because they have the urgency, it's a betting angle. I'm not saying that whatsoever, but this is a matchup where while Dallas has some defensive line prowess that can cause some issues for Carson Wentz, as we saw, pressure, as we've known for his entire career, is what's horrible for Wentz. Dallas can be able to apply that to Washington, but this is a must-win game for the Commanders. So prior to Week 4's beatdown, I had Washington at my projected line at -2.5, total at 44, and the look-ahead line was flipped completely the other way. It was Dallas -2.5, total of 43. Reopened, I said Dallas -3. They reopened back at -3, and there were some talks about Dak maybe coming back. Looks like we're going to be facing Cooper Rush. And given this matchup, the reason why I'm kind of leaning toward going with my numbers and kind of going against the market and taking that 3.5 and that hook is, while you could go through the stats, Washington has the lowest DVOA of any team in the National Football League. Dallas, they're 2-1 without Dak. They beat the Bengals. They beat the lowly Giants. They had that tight game against the Buccaneers to show how good Dallas' defense really is. But looking at these teams and from a personnel perspective, I know that Dallas has a better defense overall, but I don't think these teams are too far off in actual talent. And then when you break down the coaching, I think we have horrible coaches on both of these two sidelines. So one thing that Ron Rivera does do well as a head coach is gets his team to prepare to play kind of in the worst of all situations, and he's able to kind of muster up that he's a great leader of men, not great with the X's and O's. And going into Dallas against Cooper Rush, I expect the Washington to completely revamp their style. Dallas is coming off that short week, and I think Washington will do a better job being able to run the ball, throw some screen passes, and control that clock a little bit. I'm not going all the way to say the Commanders are pulling off this upset, but given the personnel, the coaching, and the spot, I think getting not only that 3, but that 3.5, that 0.5 hook is going to come into play at the end of this matchup. I think the Commanders will be able to kind of strengthen and cover that spread on Sunday.
Man, I don't know many people who are going to be running up to the counter to back the Commanders. So Pauly's saying walk, maybe don't run, as long as you're getting that hook with the Washington Commanders looking in the bounce back spot there, man. Ooh,
And
that's an acid play, man.
They are joining the do not bet list for the rest of the season if they cannot cover the spread on
the do not bet list. It's getting longer week by week. Pauly, another thing that you love doing is finding some values in these teaser spots, whether they're your typical advantage ones or not. You wanted to throw out a leg here, so where are you going at a teaser leg for the folks here today on SportsMemo Today?
Yeah, of course. And this goes back to being, process being more important than results in the long term. So last week I had 3 teaser legs with every leg cashed except for the one that I put in all 3, which is on the Patriots plus the 8.5 at home against the Ravens. We saw that last minute fumble, that interception that Mac Jones threw. I'm not going to really, again, be upset. And while I wish I cashed some tickets on Sunday, the fact that the process I felt was truly there and every other leg that I put together hit. It's just the one that I decided to, sprinkle in all 3 was the one that ended up being the dud, which, I'm not making excuses, but again, knowing that I took a Wong teaser, got the great odds, and the other bets that I hit were on point. And then given the way that game unfolded, again, I'm still trusting my process here, but this is a matchup where I was kind of on point with the lines. I had my projected line at Cleveland minus 2.5. Look ahead was Cleveland minus 3. I projected it to go down to 2.5 to where I had it initially. It reopened, it stayed at Cleveland minus 3, which is fine. Then that money has come in, and that line went down to 1.5. Now it's sitting at 1 in a lot of shops. And I think the Falcons in a 6-point teaser are a fantastic back this weekend. I was very low on ATL coming into the season. I actually thought the Falcons could be in the consideration for having the worst record in the NFL. And while they are still the Falcons and you can't really bank on them to win football games, they're at least showing me that they're competitive this season. Of course, they had that first week where they blew that lead against the Saints. They came all the way back in week 2 to cover and almost beat the Rams. And then last week, they're able to go into Seattle and beat Geno Smith. Now, don't get me wrong, beating Geno Smith is probably not the most difficult thing, but going into Seattle and beating a team is. Cleveland, on the other hand, they beat the Panthers on a last-minute field goal week 1, and their kicker since then has kind of been on the fritz. He has not been consistent. They come and blow that game to the Jets, a game they should have won, and then they beat up on no offense, Dan, a lowly Steelers team. I know you're an Eagles fan, but still the Pennsylvania connection there. And I am more impressed with how hard the Falcons play, given their lack of talent. I mean, if you look into the stats, you're not going to see anything impressive. They're still letting up a ton of yards and a ton of points, but they have shown their ability to kind of get creative on defense. Dean Pease does a great job. Mariota has a great control of this offense, and though he is, again, I'm not touting Mariota as a great quarterback, but the way that he's familiar with Arthur Smith, their time in Tennessee, it's clearly translating, and they are doing a great job of getting production out of their offensive line, which is my biggest concern of this for them this season. Then on the Browns side, again, they're kind of overperforming. I think the Browns actually were in a great spot to win a couple of games because Brissett is one of those, crafty veterans that can lead a win. But looking at their injury report and whether or not these players actually end up playing, but they have 3 starters on their offensive line currently listed as questionable. Denzel Ward, their lockdown corner, and of course, Myles Garrett, who was involved in that 1-car accident this past week. I don't know those full details, but I know that he was actually charged with something. So I'm not sure if he'll be suiting up, and that's going to be a huge loss for the Browns defense. Again, the Falcons are probably going to find a way to falcon this game and lose it in the last couple of seconds. But if they lose on a game-losing touchdown, field goal, or either or, we'll have that 7.5 hook covered. So I think the Falcons are a fantastic leg in the teaser this weekend.
And if you're doing a teaser, there needs to be a second leg. So I'll throw, since the line is on the move, you can still grab it now somewhere. What about Tampa as the other leg? Tampa Bay, Sunday Night Football, take them up to 7. Can I win you around on that, or you would prefer to get
if we get the 1.5, 100%, that's an angle. But
I think that's long gone. Yeah, because it's moved down to a pick 'em even.
Yeah, KC opened at 3, and I'm looking at this game very intensely because I do like KC despite the line movement against them.
All right.
But certainly, if you're getting that hook and that 1.5, which is going to be tough because it's going back between PK. Some books even have KC -1, some have TB. But I think that's a great point if you're able to get that hook. But digression aside,
Yeah,
for that matchup, though, I am.
I think the hook, yeah, I think the hook is long gone for us, Pauly, unfortunately. So we'll have to search high and low for the other leg in this one. We mentioned that code that we have right now, SMT3. You can get 3-day all access for the price of one, just $39. It's good for any of our guests here on Sports Memo Today. So you can head over sm.buzz/EP. What kind of plays will they find out over there for tonight or moving forward through the weekend, Pauly?
Yeah, so I'm going to stick with doing my all access for Sundays, just so people can kind of see the process, because I'm not in football, going and saying this is a 5%er we must hit. If you want to get my 5%ers and my other 1 and 2 and 3 or 4%ers, you should go with the all access. But for tonight, I have a player prop that I feel very strongly about. That's up and loaded on Sports Memo. I'm not going to divulge that for my clients, but I am going to say that I do like an over angle in this game. So we're looking at some yards for some players tonight.
Looking at some yardage, Eric Pauly. You can go and check him out over sm.buzz/EP. You can also catch him in about 30 minutes time on Full Count right here on the Sports Memo YouTube page. EP, always a pleasure, my guy. Good luck this weekend and good luck on the 5%er you got rocking tonight. Let's get some yardage rocking tonight in the Bengals and Dolphins game. Appreciate Eric Pauly stepping by. You can, of course, check him out on sportsmemo.com. That special, good for Pauly. It's good for our next guest. It's also good for Jesse Shule and Moneyline Matt, who were on Tuesday's show. They had actionable info for this weekend, so you can head back and check that one out. Let's welcome in our second guest here, mid-major Matt Josephs, joining the show. And Matt, I feel like Pauly should have given us a trigger warning. He used the word process way too many times for me to be feeling good, because us as Sixers fans, we needed a trigger warning on that one, MJ.
Yeah, we could say directions, you could say other words, but yeah, process kind of just gives you a shiver and makes you think of the days of when I can't even Todd McCullough and some of these other players were suiting up for the Sixers. Luckily, we are past that time now. No more of those guys are suiting up for the Sixers nowadays.
Yeah, and all it took was one media day for all these Sixers fans to be fully back on the bandwagon, not caring about Glenn Rivers, not caring about James Harden. Everybody's back. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, Matt. Let's start with MLB prop here, then we'll talk a little MLB, because you have a prop in this Rays and Guardians game that goes tonight, 6:10 Eastern time. What are you eyeing in this one?
Yeah, it's, the Cal Quantrill fan club is not exactly a big one. There's only a couple of us out there. But, I mean, the thing with this guy is he's just an innings eater, and he is good for usually 6 innings, something like 20 of his last 28 starts. He's had 6 innings or more. The books, for the most part, have posted his number under that, and so that's where we're going to take advantage. Once again, I'd like Cal Quantrill over 17.5 outs tonight for the Guardians. The first 2 pitchers in this series, Bieber and McKenzie, have each gone 6 innings. The Rays lineup does make you work a little bit, but I'm not as scared about them tonight. I think Quantrill can get those 6. If you look at his starts, I mean, look, it's funny because whenever I bring up Cal Quantrill's name, everybody points out the Indians are 14-1 at home with him starting. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care if he wins. I just want him to get outs, which, leads to wins ideally. But I'm going to take over 17.5 outs with Cal Quantrill tonight. It's a solid juice. It's like minus 125 on DraftKings. So make sure to shop around if you want something a little bit better than that. But let's go outs. Let's go Cal Quantrill.
Yeah, Pavlos Lagaretos from Sports Memo. He's on our soccer show that goes on Wager Talk, Stoppage Time. He always uses a phrase. He goes, I don't care who wins. I just want to cash X amount of play. He's a big prop guy as well. So that's what I love about the props. We don't care about those season-long records. All we care about is if we get 18 outs. Cal Quantrill over the 17.5, says our guy, Matt Josephs. Matt, since we started doing shows together, the Eagles have not lost a game. I'm just saying, knock on wood, they're rolling right now. But now Dougie P, a guy who we know well, Doug Peterson and the Jaguars, are coming to Philadelphia this Sunday to face off against his former team. And Dougie P played a pretty big role in bringing Jalen Hurts to the Philadelphia Eagles. You think that quarterback he brought to town might just be flexing on him? What are you thinking in this game, Matt?
Yeah, the books are they're continuing to price Jalen Hurts' yards as if he's as if it's the old offense where they run the ball a whole lot more, and they might try and do it. The run game wasn't very good against the Commies last week, but I think that they're going to continue to throw it. They've got the advantage now. Of course, you want to check the weather forecast beforehand, make sure because it looks like there could be some remnants of the hurricane, in which case maybe this play either becomes a smaller play or it doesn't become one for you to play at all. But Jalen Hurts over 249.5 passing yards. They're continuing to price him as if this is last year. Even the one time he did not go over this, it was barely not over. That was that Detroit game way back in week 1. If the weather is right, I think this team could take advantage of the Jaguars' corners. 2 of the 3 quarterbacks have gone over this against Jacksonville so far this season. And not that there's any sort of angles in play here, but yeah, you're right. Jalen Hurts is a Philadelphia Eagle because of Doug Peterson and that crew. They want to show Doug what he can do now because people be like, well, Doug knows what Jalen could do, but this is a completely different quarterback than when Doug had him. So we'll see what happens. But I think if the weather's right, and that's something you certainly want to check on, of course, you might lose a little value on the passing yards, but if the weather's right and the rain and the wind are at least tamped down a little bit, I like the over in the passing yards for Jalen Hurts.
Well, and the thing is, too, is yes, if you want to bring in, well, Doug Peterson is familiar with the quarterback. Great. Doug Peterson isn't some great defensive mind. Like, let's not kid ourselves. If there's anything that he can do, he can scheme Trevor Lawrence into good positions against this defense. I would say more than him being able to scheme defensively against stopping Jalen Hurts. So the yardage over, I haven't looked at the price of his touchdown over, but 4 passing touchdowns in 3 games thus far. Have you looked any deeper on any of these Jalen Hurts stats? Because if that wind is down and he goes over this 249.5 yards, it kind of figures that there might be points to be had in bunches too. Any thoughts on that, Matt?
Yeah, it would be a lean to the over once again. As you said, my one concern is when they get inside the 10, the 5, they're more of a team that's going to have him run it in, or they're going to try and run it in with Miles Sanders or Gainwell or Boston Scott. So you almost need a little bit of space for it. But yeah, it's over 1.5. It's a reasonable juice. And once again, and I feel like this is the thing along the East Coast for college and pro football this weekend. You got to check the weather, got to check the rain and the wind. It's not so much the rain that worries me. It would be the wind, because you can't throw deep too far in the wind. And they're talking about 20, 30 mile per hour gusts all weekend long up and down the East Coast potentially.
So 2 props from Matt Josephs. You can hear a whole lot more prop talk tomorrow morning on Prop It Up. We mentioned that deal that's been going, SMT3. You can get 3-day all access. Pick your start date. You can ride with Matt all weekend, and you have stuff loaded already. And what are you eyeing this weekend, Matt?
Yeah, certainly. We're waiting a little bit on a lot of the college football because we just want to make sure that the track doesn't change on the hurricane. And certainly it's one of those things where I have numbers in mind, and if it moves off the numbers that I want to play, then I'm just not going to play it. I'm willing to lose an angle or something just to make sure the weather is right, because certainly in football, wind and rain is so important. So we're waiting a little bit. Those will start coming up tomorrow night. And of course, NFL props and things like that for Sunday. So if you're a prop guy, and certainly the K props and out props and things like that for Major League Baseball, we'll be doing that all weekend long.
And also, in the years of kind of following weather moves and maybe people over adjusting to weather moves, be cognizant that wind is way more important to be tracking than just the rain. Yes, both of them together, a perfect storm, so to speak, but wind is what can really wreck those passing games. We saw it happen in that Patriots game last year when they were facing off against the Bills. So, Matt, always love it. I always learn something with you when we're talking props. So looking forward to seeing you on Prop It Up tomorrow. Appreciate you coming, and we'll talk to you next Thursday, man.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Matt Josephs, SMT3. Grab 3-day all access for just $39. That code good for Eric Pauly as well, for Jesse Shule and Moneyline Matt. So you can get anybody's plays that joined me on the show this week for just $39. You get to try them out for the price of a 1-day all access. You enjoyed the show? Hop on in the comments. Let us know what you're eyeing, any props that you're looking at. You have a second teaser leg for our guy, Eric Pauly. Let us know what you're eyeing this weekend. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you grab these guys' packages. That deal only lasts Monday through midnight, so go grab it now. That's going to do it for us. Big thanks to Eric Pauly. Big thanks to Matt Josephs. I'm Dan Alexander, and we'll see you Tuesday on Sports Memo Today.